this June 18th City Council meeting for the City of Hoover order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Lyda?
I'm here.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Posey?
Here.
Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Spinner?
Here. If the clerk would provide the invocation, Mr. Posey, the pledge. This is the newest among us.
Let us pray. Lord, thank you for the gift of this day. And as we begin a new week, help us to trust that you are with us in all that we do. We pray for peace throughout the world, and starting within our own hearts. We ask for continued blessings upon this city and your wisdom and guidance upon its leaders. In your name we pray. Amen.
Salute and pledge. That being taken care of, I'm open for a motion on the minutes.
Move for approval without reading. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. In the report section is Ms. Ellen Anson. Dr. Middlebrooks is going to come down. Something about retiring? I didn't know you retired at 35 years old.
You are a politician.
We're thrilled to have Miss Anson with us this evening. And John, you want to come on down with her? This is her husband. They happen to be celebrating their anniversary tonight. Happy anniversary. They said they wouldn't want to be anywhere else for the anniversary, right? Miss Anson, let me just say we have a lot of awesome teachers in Hoover City Schools. They all deserve recognition. However, I think Ms. Anson stands out. The burnout rate for special education teachers is twice that of general education. The fact that Ms. Anson has started teaching in 1975 speaks of her dedication and her passion and her love for her children. I can't thank Ms. Anson enough. She teaches my child, Grady. And speaking on behalf of parents with special needs children, some of which may have a little harder time than most, I can count on my hand the number of people that I trust him with, and the fact that I can drop him off at Rocky Ridge Elementary and not have a worry in the world because I know he's in good hands is amazing. So for that, I thank Dr. Swate, the Rocky Ridge principal, and I thank Ms. Hanson and all of the staff there for their amazing job. So we are going to dearly miss her. We wish her well, and congratulations.
Carly, if you would. Whereas Mrs. Ellen Anson began teaching in 1975 as an art and music teacher to children with special needs. And whereas Mrs. Anson has worked for Hoover City Schools for 10 years, with the last 6 years being at Rocky Ridge Elementary School, and is currently employed as a multi-handicapped teacher. And whereas Mrs. Anson retired from teaching at the end of the 2017-18 school year, and whereas Mrs. Anson received awards during her career, such as the Teacher of the Year for the Center for Developmental Learning, Huntsville City Schools in 1999, Alabama PTA Outstanding Educator of the Year in 2008, and the Rocky Ridge and Hoover City Schools Teacher of the Year in 2013, and was also in the final 4 nominees for State Teacher of the Year. And whereas Mrs. Anson loved coming into work every day knowing that she could make a difference in the life of a child with special needs. And whereas Mrs. Anson's classroom was very unique, as it is the only elementary classroom for students with multi-disabilities in Hoover City Schools. And whereas Mrs. Anson has had countless proud moments as a special education teacher, but believes that she was most proud when her daughter chose to follow in her footsteps and whereas Mrs. Hanson attends activities that her students are involved in outside of schools, such as Miracle League Baseball and Special Equestrian, has been involved for a number of years with Special Olympics as a bocce official at the Alabama State Games in Troy, and will be traveling this year to Seattle as the bocce coach for the Alabama team in the National Special Olympics. And whereas Mrs. Hanson plans to enjoy retirement doing her favorite hobby, quilting, and plans to continue working with individuals with special needs by continuing to volunteer for local organizations as well as Special Olympics. And whereas the experiences that Mrs. Hanson brought to her students are priceless, and she is truly a treasure and one of a kind. Now therefore, I, Frank B. Mercado, Mayor of the City of Hoover, Alabama, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby wish to congratulate Ms. Ellen Hanson on her retirement from Hoover City Schools following 43 years as a teacher, and encourage all citizens to join with me in recognizing Mrs. Hanson's dedication to her position as a teacher to children with special needs, and how she has improved the lives of children with special needs in the City of Hoover, Alabama.
I thought a bocce was something.
Okay, and on three. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more here. Yeah.
You want to take a picture of me?
Okay. Got it. 3, 1, 2, 3. And one more. 1, 2, 3. Make sure you got each one.
I don't think it's, I'm sure it's fine.
All right, next we have a proclamation for the Hoover Senior Center. A little bit of excitement going on there. Coming down.
All of us.
All of you,
There's safety in them.
Price is Right. I see a current school board president and a past school board president here. Both.
Whereas the Hoover Senior Center has provided services to adults ages 55 and under since inception in 2007 that are second to none, and has been offering exemplary classes and programming and performing in an outstanding professional manner. And whereas the mission of the Hoover Senior Center is to provide a variety of opportunities that promote quality of life through social engagement, physical well-being, community involvement, creativity, and lifelong learning for older adults. And whereas the Hoover Senior Center's training and expertise is clearly evident in all areas of the center's operations. And whereas the accreditation procedure for senior centers is established by the National Institute of Senior Centers through the National Council on Aging, and takes into account such standards as community connections, program development and implementation, facility and operations, purpose of planning, records and reports, among others. And whereas a group of peer reviewers throughout the United States take into account these standards, set forth to make the determination for National Senior Center accreditation. And whereas effective June 7, 2018, the Hoover Senior Center earned accreditation from the National Council on Aging, and is the first center in state of Alabama to earn this esteemed achievement. And whereas the staff of the Hoover Senior Center, along with volunteers and community partners who have steadfastly pursued this goal throughout the last 2.5 years, are to be congratulated for this tremendous achievement. Now therefore be it resolved by the Hoover City Council and Mayor that the Hoover Senior Center is hereby recognized, honored, and committed for its commitment to excellence in providing opportunities, programs, and services to members of our community ages 55 and up, and its determination to always go above and beyond in its service to our Hoover community, and its outstanding achievement of National Senior Center accreditation.
And 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
All right, next, we have a proclamation, Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. Do you have any representatives to come down? Come on down. Do you have any council members who would like to come down?
I'm a little taller up there. A couple of weeks ago, Megan contacted me, wanted to talk about lighting up City Hall purple. Kind of like they light up City Hall blue for autism, and mentioned it was for Alzheimer's, and my grandmother passed away with Alzheimer's in 2009, so it's very near and dear to my heart. And, you know, first I contacted you, Alan, but you were out of town, and I'm totally out of town, so I contacted Lori, and Lori took care of this in a couple of days, and I really appreciate that. Thank you for that. And very worthy cause, and very happy to do this for you guys.
Whereas over 5 million Americans, including more than 92,000 Alabamians, are living with Alzheimer's disease, someone new is added to those ranks in 66 seconds. Whereas Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States and the only leading cause of death that cannot be cured, prevented, or even slowed. And whereas researchers are working diligently to develop accurate ways to diagnose and treat Alzheimer's disease. And whereas the Walk to End Alzheimer's is the world's largest event to raise awareness and funds for Alzheimer's care, support, and research programs. And whereas the Walk to End Alzheimer's Heart of Alabama will take place on September 30th, 2018. And whereas the Alzheimer's Association is the largest nonprofit funder for research in the world, and is here today marking June as Paint the Town Purple for Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, encouraging Hoover businesses and residents to join the fight against this devastating disease by decorating their storefronts and spaces with purple, as well as to wear purple to raise awareness of Alzheimer's disease. Now therefore, I, Frank P. Mercado, Mayor of the City of Hoover, do hereby proclaim June 2018 as Paint the Town Purple for Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month in Hoover, and urge all citizens to take steps to act now to end Alzheimer's disease, open their minds to learn the facts about Alzheimer's, voice their support, and become an advocate to move the Alzheimer's Association's mission forward.
Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Let me get one here.
You'll be happy to know there are 50,000 people watching on YouTube. All right, Mr. Mayor,
Well,
have
we,
something before Chief Henley?
yes, we'd like Chief Bentley to come up, and we have started a tradition here of bringing our promotions, our new employees before the council and our citizens. I think it's a wonderful ceremony for us to go through, and I'm looking forward to this one particularly tonight. So, Chief, why don't you come up? Tell us what you got.
more relaxed in your lake fishing.
Thank you, appreciate that. Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. President, thank you for this opportunity. This is always a great opportunity and a good experience for us to be able to share with you and the public our most recent promotions. And this is really special to us because we're able to present to you 5 people that we have promoted over the past 3 or 4 months that are just going to be true leaders and have been true leaders within our department. Their personal life, their professional lives parallel. They are exactly what we're looking for in leaders within our department. So it's my honor to be able to present these 5 individuals. First, and in no particular order, is Battalion Chief Dwayne Prater. Chief Prater, would you come down? Chief Prater began his fire service career volunteering with the Concord Fire Department in 1995. He went to work as a career firefighter for the Bessemer Fire Department in 1996. He spent 6 years there. And he came to the city of Hoover in 2001. He's been steadily promoted through the ranks. He's worked at stations 1, 2, 3, and 4. He holds a master's degree in public safety administration. He's just been accepted into the executive fire officer program at the National Fire Academy, which is a 4-year program. He is just a dynamic individual. He is the son of Jerry Prater, who I had the opportunity to work with for a short period of time at Birmingham. He retired after 23 years as the battalion chief of Birmingham, and then he went on to become the Panama City fire chief and served there for 17 years. He retired in 2017. It's my honor to present to you Chief Dwayne Prater. Next is Battalion Chief Mark Thornton. Mark, would you come on down? Chief Thornton began his career in the fire service in 1999 with the Clanton Volunteer Fire Department. He went to work for the Prattville Fire Department and started his career at the Prattville Fire Department in 2000. He obtained his paramedic license in 2002, and he came to work for the city of Hoover in 2003. He was promoted steadily through the ranks, and he also has worked at stations 2, 3, and 4. He has an associate's degree in drafting and design, and he is currently enrolled in Jacksonville State to finish up his bachelor's degree in emergency management. Mark also is a dynamic individual, and we just thank him for his service. It's my honor to present to you Battalion Chief Mark Thornton. Next is Captain Matt Javanette. Matt was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He moved to Birmingham in 1997 to play baseball for UAB on a scholarship, where he met the love of his life, Kelly. And he finished college. He started his fire service career in 2003 with the Bessemer Fire Department, where he served 5 years. He came to Hoover in 2008. He also has been steadily promoted through the ranks and was promoted to captain June of this year. He had a little help getting started in the fire service after he met his wife-to-be, Kelly. Lo and behold, her dad was also a Birmingham Battalion Chief, Chief Billy Hewitt, who's here with us tonight. He served 24 years with the Birmingham Fire Department, and he retired as a battalion chief and then served 20 years as the fire chief of the parent fire department. So we have a long history here with family members being firefighters. It is my honor and privilege to present to you Captain Matthew Javanette. We have 2 more. I should have told you 5 so you know where we're going to stop, but we have 2 more. Captain Chuck Ladrone. Captain Ladrone grew up in the Birmingham area. He started his career in the fire service in 2001, where he served for 5 years with the Tuscaloosa Fire and Rescue Service. He came to Hoover in 2006, and he also has been steadily promoted through the ranks and was promoted to captain in June of this year. Him and his wife both help a lot with Camp Conquest and Children's Harbor, which is a burn camp for children. They're very passionate about that, which we just finished up last week, and they do a really good job of that. He also is the son of a Birmingham firefighter, lieutenant, who retired from the Birmingham Fire Department after 33 years of service. So it's my honor and privilege to present to you Charles LeGrone. And last but not least, Lieutenant Ben Reynolds. Ben, would you come on down? Ben is the son of 10 children. He is one of 6 brothers and 3 sisters. He grew up in a military family. His father retired as a colonel with the Air Force. And he started his fire service career with the Prattville Fire Department in 2005. Came to the Hoover Fire Department in 2010. He was promoted to driver in 2016 and then lieutenant in November of this past year. Ben is a unique individual. He's a very physically fit guy. He is just, he's all about physical fitness. And he just on a whim competed in Team USA triathlon in Chicago 2 years ago and was a strong competitor. He's just that type of guy. He's just a good leader within our department, and we're very happy to present to you Lieutenant Ben Reynolds. This is going to be kind of chaotic for just a second, but if all the family members, and I'm going to mention everybody's name as they begin to come down. Chief Dwayne Prater's wife, 26 years is with him. His 2 daughters, Caitlin and Rayleigh. I know I was going to mess it up, I'm sorry. If you guys would come on down. Chief Mark Thornton's family is with him also. His wife Tammy, son Brady, and daughter Abby. Captain Javanette's family is here. Kelly, Lily, Reed, Battalion Chief Billy Hewitt, his wife Sharon. Chuck LeGrone, his wife is here. Leah, his dad, Chuck LeGrone, and wife Pam. And then Ben's family, Rachel. Grace could not be with us tonight, and Lowry is with us. If you could come on down. Leah, I didn't say anything about the dog Cotton. They were great names. Cotton, dog.
He'll be here in a minute. Y'all can have him. Okay. Why don't we, some of y'all scoot in a little closer? Chief, you wanna come?
Do we need to bring it up? Get up. If you want to do this, just want to do individual families, that's simple. we have something we wanted to try to do for many years is start a firefighter combat challenge, which is a team that competes nationally against other firefighters. And you've probably seen them on ESPN or something like that. And we've been able to assemble a team, and they're going to go to Lexington, Kentucky at the end of the month. And then they're going to compete in Montgomery also. Mr. Smith has been a wonderful sponsor for that. We're really looking forward to that. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Green, you have an appointment.
Yes, I do have appointments tonight for the Board of Zoning Adjustment. I move that Mr. Curtis Jackson be appointed to the open position that we have.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions from the council? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Welcome aboard. Mr. Murphy has an obligation that he's going to need to attend to after 7. He needs to leave, so I'm going to bring items 24 through 27 up out of order, so he can be here to participate in these first readings. The first, item 24, ordinance 18-2387, has been modified. The Mayor had introduced it to the community as a 1% or a 1 cent increase on sales tax. Through some challenging discussions and negotiations, we have come to where the ordinance is going to bring, if approved, later, these ordinances, we're going to have a call meeting for the second reading and possible passage on July the 10th rather than July the 2nd. That would be the week of the 4th, and a lot of people out of town, so we want to make sure that we don't make that or let that be an obstacle to people being here. Monday is planning and zoning, so we're going to be here Tuesday, July the 10th at 6 o'clock for final consideration, second reading. So, Mr. Corley, ordinance 18-2387, first reading.
This ordinance amends the municipal code of the city of Hoover to modify the sales and use tax levy.
All right, for those of you from the media, we have copies of the ordinance, and for the public, we've got a few copies, but they will be placed on the city website tomorrow. Item 25, first reading of ordinance 18-2388. It amends the hotel motel tax from 3 to 6%. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance amends the municipal code of the city of Hoover to modify the hotel and motel tax levy.
We have some discussion, possibly from the council. Item 26 is first reading, ordinance 18-2389. It moves, as does the sales tax, but it's a different section of the code, so we need to deal with it independently. And it deals with the tangible personal property tax. Corley, ordinance 18-2389.
This ordinance amends the municipal code of the city of Hoover to modify the tangible personal property tax levy.
And then finally, first reading, ordinance 18-2390, that takes the renting or leasing of real estate from 1% to 2%. Mr. Floyd.
This ordinance amends the municipal code of the city of Hoover to modify the tax levy for the renting and leasing of real estate.
Any comments or questions from the council? Well, I guess that went well. For the audience, these are going to be available. Those of you that can be here on the 2nd, we encourage you to come and participate during the comment period on that day, as well as on the 10th. So, that being said, yes, sir. Dr. Lopez, do you have a presentation? I didn't know we had show and tell.
Yes.
Good evening. In some discussions with Councilman Murphy, he had a lot of good questions about our capital projects and capital improvement program. And from those discussions, it was decided that it might be well worth the effort to put something together a little bit more formal to go through that, especially since we obviously got the quarter-wide projections, and there were two facets, two things that affected, one of those being the regular general fund operations, but the second one being, with their projections, we were not going to have any funding available for future capital projects. And so that's basically what the purpose of this particular presentation is. So one thing I've learned over the years, if you're looking to understand a subject, if you start out asking the questions, the who, what, when, where, why, how, by the time you get done with those questions, a lot of times you have a better understanding of what you're dealing with. And so that's kind of the approach from this presentation. Obviously, the who, when it comes to capital projects, these aren't isolated projects. They affect all departments. All departments are reliant on capital projects, both either directly, for example, equipment that might be purchased to do their jobs, or indirectly, IT that comes behind infrastructure and so forth that allows them to do their jobs. And therefore, since all departments are affected, then all citizens utilize the investment in capital projects, and that's a very important criteria of how we are able to deliver services to the citizens. In terms of the what about capital projects, City of Hoover, over the years, we spend a lot of money on capital. This list that you see on the screen is just some of those. It's definitely not all-inclusive, but examples of items that we either maintain or we replaced include roads. We have 490 vehicles in the city. We have traffic control, we have sidewalks, we have guardrail, fire apparatus, lots of buildings, 10 fire stations, City Hall, Public Safety Center, Recreation Center, City Senior Center, the Hoover Met, now the Finley Center, the library, and other police substations. We have 27 parks, 1,150 acres, lighting, pavilions, fields, all these things that have to be maintained, not only maintained, but we have to continue to invest in those. Also IT infrastructure and land. The when, so you will actually see this number toward the end of the presentation, but in terms of when have we spent money on capital, and keep in mind on this particular presentation, I'm focusing on Fund 303, which is our capital projects fund, our major capital projects fund. So this slide focuses on fiscal 13 to fiscal 17, and you can see that this is actually represents what we actually spent out of this fund. So from 8.1 million up to 14.1 million over those 5 years. And if you average those 5 years, it's just under $11 million a year on capital only from this fund. And the key, I guess, point to get out of this slide would be like projects and needs will be necessary in the future as well. These do not go away the needs for this do not go away just because their funding doesn't necessarily exist. In terms of where, all of these projects we talked about, they transcend to all departments, but they cross across the whole city. In other words, roads across the city, parks across the city, fire stations are across the street, sidewalks, buildings, etc. So all of the city is benefiting from these projects and has a need for these projects. Why? Any good capital improvement program has a funding source for capital projects. Why do we do that? First, you'll see capital assets. They're used in operations, as we discussed, where the performance and continued use is essential to health, safety, economic development, quality of life for those receiving the services. So that's what all these departments are doing. They're, whether they are helping the health or economic development, these projects are all lending itself to these things that citizens come to expect. Another reasons for the why, because deferring capital asset maintenance can cost more money on your operations. Just like at home, if you don't invest in your house, you're gonna eventually have to pay more, and so you try to keep up with what you need to on those. So therefore, it can threaten the essential and desired level of services to our citizens. And thus, it could increase the long-term costs and liabilities, and thus adversely affect operating budgets. Another example of that would be vehicles. You want to reinvest in your vehicle so you're not having to pay more to maintain a vehicle over time. And thus, that's kind of the negative side if you defer it, but the positive side, if you invest in it, through sound repairs, replacements, or retirement decisions, whatever that may be, you can provide savings over the long term. So even though you may have to invest more up front, it could save money over time. The how. One of the things we do in our budget process, we have what we call a 5-year capital projects form, and it's a 3-page form. And on the last page, we have, in the last couple of years, have asked departments to classify what the need is for this particular capital project. And there are 3 classifications, major classifications. One is it's imperative and it's urgent, it's a must-do project. These should not be postponed, and we do have these at times, but it could endanger the public health and safety. It could satisfy a legal obligation. It can address an emergency situation. It can avoid a potential liability or prevent irreparable damage. Then we also have those that could be essential, necessary. We should do these projects to rehabilitate or replace an obsolete public facility, to add needed space to an overcrowded facility, stimulate economic growth and private capital investment. You put money in at the front end because it's helping on the latter end, which eventually could help operations, and reduce future operating maintenance costs that we just discussed. And then also we have the important, the could do, the benefit the city. A lot of these go back to the whole quality of life concept we just talked about. And we may provide a newer, expanded level of service, enhance cultural and natural resources, reduce energy consumption, promote intergovernmental cooperation, or replaces physically or economically obsolete equipment. And so these categories are important. All of these things can be important at times. Some of them are musty, you have to do, and you really shouldn't put them off, but all of them lend themselves to what makes a great city. How in terms of funding? Most of you are familiar with the way we have funded capital projects since fiscal 2007 is we allocate funding based on the project length estimated budget. And this policy ensures that as the project is completed over time, because many projects do transcend years, that funding is available. The perfect example for this is when we had the Great Recession. We saw revenues decrease $9 million in 1 year, but yet we still had capital projects that had to be paid for. We were able to do that because of this funding mechanism. So therefore, since fiscal 2007, everything above the general, that we earn in the general fund above $100,000 has been transferred to this capital projects fund to supplement existing project, whether it's overruns, bids come in and they're more than we expect, projects change and possibly cost more, or even new projects, and that's how we've been able to fund those. And so by doing that, this graph that you see on the screen just shows you a chart of how that has changed over the last 10 years. And you can see at the bottom, starts with fiscal 2008, where we had a little over $3 million we transferred to Capital Projects Fund. And then we had our, in 2012, we started finally recovering from the Great Recession. And so that picked up to $9 million. Fiscal 14 and 15, we had $15 to $16 million. In 1 year there, I think our revenues increased like $9 million, or maybe $11 million in 1 year. And then, as you know, in the fiscal 16 to 17, we saw $13.6 million, and then it dropped all the way down to 2.5 in 1 year. We've talked a lot about the reasons for that, and they're reiterated on this slide, but mainly that $11 million change in 1 year was mainly due to personnel increases. We increased full-time positions by 20. We had increase in benefits. Finley Center operations, $1.2 million. the debt service for the Met Complex was 2.6 million, increased school contribution 2.4 million, and revenue decrease of about $1 million. And so all of these add up to almost $11 million, which is what we can attribute this change to. The problem with this is many of these things, they're not one-time items. So it's not like the problem is going away. In addition, this was the first time, I believe, in Hoover's history that we saw a revenue decrease that was not due to a recession issue. And so the last couple of slides, the what's next, I have a handout for the council. I thought it'd be easier for you to see, and you can take these with you. Okay, this slide probably looks somewhat familiar because it represents actual history back to 2013. It also includes the Porter White projections that take us out to 2023. And I've also inserted in the middle the 2018 budget along with the blue column is what right now through 7 periods I estimate what we will end fiscal 18, which with everything, taking everything into consideration and some amendments that we've had, I think that we'll probably end fiscal 18 around $2 million, but that could change, obviously. What I do want to point out on this, the red that's on the last few years, that represents the deficiencies in our general fund for the Porter White projections. And so if we go to the next page, those will carry over to the top. And so some of you guys have heard, well, how much do we actually, I think you've even asked, how much do we actually need? And you've heard the $11 million number. This is where the calculation for this comes from. And I want to be clear that that's a minimum. And I'm going to show how that was calculated. At the top, in the green, you'll see it's the general fund projection for the Porter White. So these are the unfavorable projections for the general fund each year. Fiscal 19, negative $4 million. Fiscal 20, negative $5 million. Fiscal 21, negative $6 million. Fiscal 22, negative $7 million. Then, as many of you know, our debt service decreases in fiscal 23, but we're still at a negative $3 million. The average over those 5 years for the general fund is a negative $5 million. Then, and as I mentioned before, this is a two-pronged issue. There's the general fund operations, but then there's the funding for capital projects. So in order to calculate how much do we need for capital projects, I looked at it 2 ways. The first way is I looked at how much did we actually generate that we transferred to the capital projects fund for the last 5 years. And you can see we generated from 7.7 million to 2.5 million last year, the big decrease, which was a total of 55 million over those years and averages about $11 million a year. Then looking at it a different way, going back to that previous slide, we looked at how much did we actually spend. So that's how much was generated, but how much did we actually spend? Doing the same calculation, taking out the big Hoover Metropolitan Complex funds that were spent out of 303, the total comes to 54.1 million being what was spent to an average of 10.8. So if you look at both of those, they both come back to about $11 million in capital only. So if you added that negative $5 million for the general fund projections and you added it to the $11 million that you need for capital, based on Porter White's projection, we need $16 million a year just to maintain what we've done, not taking into account other items. However, in the blue, I said, let's assume that we maybe bring in a little bit more revenue than we project or they're projecting, and let's assume we can control costs like the mayor has instructed us to do this year. And let's assume that we get a $5 million pickup. I'm not gonna guarantee that's gonna happen, that's just an assumption. If you do that, you apply against the 16 million, that is where the $11 million figure comes. Again, it's assuming a $5 million favorable pickup either from revenue increases or from expenditure savings. So just to summarize, what next? The $11 million at a minimum gets us back to where we were to cover operating and regular capital. Without any additional funding, our capital will be minimal or non-existent. Our operating would be cut in a world of increasing costs and needs. In addition, we have a new $85 million facility, and that requires additional operating just because it exists. But we would have to operate on previous amounts of funding possibly. And then $11 million only maintains what we have done in the recent past. It does not include or address additional operational needs, staffing needs, maintenance contracts, employee attraction, retention benefits maybe that need to be, utility increases, whatever they may be. Doesn't cover major capital endeavors. It doesn't cover up shoring up the general fund balance that might be needed. We've seen in a situation where in 5 years we could almost deplete our entire general fund balance. If we were, another thing on here, it doesn't address an economic downturn. If we were to have another recession, we're already so thin, we would be in trouble. And also it doesn't address the increase in online shopping and its effect on our revenue collections and the fact that they have slowed growth. So overall, I just wanted to cover kind of the importance of capital to all the departments, but mainly to the citizens, and just show that having a funding program is very critical to the future of the city.
Mr. President?
Yes,
I made some quick, thank you so much. I know you've been bombarded with your normal duties, but also getting the information to the council so we can make informed decisions. One quick question for you on this capital project that has been based out year to year, are some in the 303 funding mechanism. Is some of those costs wrapped into already allocated dollars that you may have be doing projects with the state or the county? Or are those wrapped up in any allocated dollars prior to those years?
Are you referring to
Like
this?
Valladale?
Yes, so basically right now we have a little over $30 million in fund balance for the Capital Projects Fund 303. All of that except just under $1 million is allocated to projects including Valleydale. So they have been allocated already, that money has been allocated already except for just under $1 million.
Is some of our capital dollars could only be used per law, state, federal, for particular projects?
That is correct. If you look at it like special revenue funds, gas tax funds, those can only be used for what the law allows. And so you can't just use it, say, because I want some new IT equipment, I can't use gas tax funds for something like that. So they're restricted.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Anything else for Dr. Lopez?
Mr. President, I have a question. One other thing I think is important to note in this is smaller cities, like where my father-in-law was mayor, a lot of times you don't have a 303 capital projects fund. If you want to do something, you have to go out and borrow the funds to do it. In that situation, you also have to have the money and the revenue coming in to pay that back. We have been blessed to have this projects fund to be able to do that without having to borrow money, which has helped us get to a AAA credit rating.
Yes, I agree with that.
Anything else? Thank you, ma'am. All right, now we're gonna move back to item 6, resolution 58-2218, Mr. Corley.
this resolution amends the budget for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2018, as set forth on the exhibit attached to the resolution.
Move to approve resolution 58-2218.
Second.
We have a motion second. Dr. Lopez, if you would get up, I know it's a very short list. Maybe you could just go over the highlights for us.
Super on the budget amendment.
My amendment.
Yes, there are two items. One item number one on your Exhibit A is in reference to the splash pad and playground that's going to go out at the Hoover Met Complex. This particular budget item is budgeting first of all, the contributions that have been committed. I think Dean Nance has worked very hard on that, so it's budgeting that money. And then also, we're budgeting additional city funds to cover the total cost of that project. Those funds are coming from investment income that has been earned on the 2016 debt issuance, as we've had time over the years to spend that money. The second item is related to fuel costs for the fleet. Everybody probably knows that fuel's has been increasing. And so this amendment is for $200,000. We anticipate there could probably be another amendment at the end of the year, but we think this will get us through at least the next few months.
Dr. Lopez, does the city use any E85 anymore, or we just use straight gasoline?
I believe we are not using E85, but I can say that I am not a fuel expert.
Maybe we'll get Ben on that a little bit later. Any questions for Dr. Lopez? Any questions from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 7, Resolution 582318, Mr. Corley.
Invitations for bid for ballistic vest carriers replace bid number 18-003, which sends 121 vendors listed on the City of Hoover vendor list. Bids were opened on Friday, April 6, 2018. 10 bids were received. This resolution accepts the bid of law enforcement supply for such items.
Move to approve resolution 582318.
Second.
Motion second. Mr. Powell, if I understand, remember right, this is a 3-year bid?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
3-year bid, not to exceed
Well, when you say not to exceed,
88,000.
but this is actually a unit cost bid, so it depends on the number of each
How much
item.
actually,
This is an estimate of what we would spend in that 3-year period.
88,000.
That's right.
Thank you, sir.
89,000.
89. Any questions for Mr. Powell? Anything from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 8, Resolution 582418, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Mercado to execute a renewal of the city's stop-loss insurance policy with Alliant Insurance Services.
Move to approve resolution 582418.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This was brought up in a lot of detail on Thursday. Unless anybody has any question, this is more housekeeping in nature. Renewal from an existing contract, correct, Mr. Ben? Same provider?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 9, Resolution 582518, Mr. Foley.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Mercado to execute a renewal of the city's crime insurance policy with Hartford Fire Insurance Company.
Move to approve resolution 582518.
Second.
We have a motion second. Mr. Powell, this once again is a contract with an existing provider, correct?
Yes, sir, if I recall correctly, that is what was discussed Thursday.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the council? From the audience? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 10, Resolution 582618, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Frank Mercado to, or his designee, to execute e-payment enrollment authorization forms regarding the city's ambulance billing.
Move to approve resolution 582618.
Second.
This is, we have a motion and a second. This is strictly, Chief Bentley, this is strictly billing opportunity that the fire department's trying to.
Yes, sir, this is just housekeeping issues and to allow the funds that they collect to go straight into our.
Housekeeping issue. Thank you, sir. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 11, 2718, Mr. Corley.
This resolution declares the following property as a public nuisance due to weeds and grass thereon and orders the abatement thereof as provided under Alabama law. 3506 Lindcrest Drive, all which is located in Hoover, Alabama.
Move to approve resolution 582718.
Second.
A motion and a second, Mr. Mack.
Yes, sir.
I hate to go a meeting without saying hello. These pictures were from today.
Yes, sir, they were.
Front looks fairly decent, but has an Amazon jungle in the back. All right, any questions from the council?
Mr. President, I just want to commend you on the number of these that disappeared. That is fantastic.
We had a great week on that, so they did a very good job on it too, so.
Mr. President, Mr. Mack, is the 3506 address in Aberdeen?
It appears to be vacant. It's a local owner though, so I think we might get some action on that.
Thank you. Especially if they hear about another item coming up Sunday. Any other questions? Mr. Mack, anything from the audience? This property owner here might want to speak. Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 12, Resolution 582818, Mr. Corley.
This resolution extends the city's cable television franchise with Marcus Cable of Alabama LLC, DBA Charter Communications through October 15, 2018.
Move to approve resolution 582818.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Powell's been working with these for, I know, the 13 years, 14 years I've been on the council, and we now have progressed to what we lovingly call Powell 37. Maybe by the time, 47, maybe by the time we hit 50, we'll have it all figured out. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 13, Resolution 582918, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Mercado or his designated to execute the One Government Procurement Alliance Membership Agreement and by Board's National Purchasing Cooperative Organizational Interlocal Agreement.
Motion to approve resolution 582918.
Second.
A motion second. For those of you here and watching, this is simply a membership agreement to join two purchasing agents to try to cut the cost of operating and capital projects. Any other questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 15, Resolution 583118, Mr. Corley. Skip 14? I certainly did. Item 14, Resolution 583018, Mr. Corley.
This resolution approves Mayor Frank Mercado or his designated to execute two copier lease agreements with Xerox as noted in the resolution.
Motion to approve resolution 583018.
Second.
Have a motion second. This is simply a lease agreement for copiers, printers. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 15, Mr. Corley, Resolution 583118.
This resolution declares the city-owned items listed in Exhibit A to the resolution as surplus and authorizes these items to be disposed of by sale as is at public auction.
Move to approve resolution 583118.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ben, you want to give the auction date, time, and place?
We do not actually have that date just yet, but we will post that information on the city's website. And working with Mr. Green, we're going to try and make that very prominently displayed on the city's website, make sure that everybody knows when the date is.
Mr. Green going to be the auctioneer? If not, I know Mr. Lyda has experience.
We're open to that.
All right. Any questions or comments for Mr. Powell? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 16, Resolution 583218, Mr. Corley.
This resolution relates to the collection of costs incurred by the city in the abatement of weeds on certain properties within the city. This resolution also assesses the cost listed on the report of costs against the properties described in Exhibit A, resolution, in the amounts indicated, authorizes and directs the city clerk to give a copy of this resolution to the appropriate tax collector or revenue commissioner who is charged with collecting the municipal taxes under state law, and authorizes the city clerk to file a lien instrument known as a notice of property assessment in the amounts indicated on Exhibit A for each property set forth on Exhibit A with the appropriate office and judge of probate in which the real property is located.
Move to approve resolution 583218.
Second.
Got a motion second, this is a long time in coming. I think, now that we're gonna be getting those liens filed, maybe you'll have a little better compliance, Mr. Wyatt. Any questions from the council?
Mr. President,
Oh, lining up.
I know the city of Hoover always exerts and practices a great deal of discretion. I would just encourage Mr. White to continue to practice sound discretion when applying this ordinance or this resolution.
Shaw.
Mr. President, thank you. By the same token, we've also seen many times where people have just don't care, don't mow the yard. We go in there and take care of it for them, sometimes multiple times. So there's other sides of the coin too. I think that's a good representation of our city that we do use discretion when necessary. But I'm glad to see this. That we're actually recovering the costs from places we need to. Mr. Corley, do we know what the total amount of recovery that we're filing for is?
I do not have a total.
Mr. President, if I may,
Yes, sir.
$3,580.28.
That's for cost. Mr. White, while you're up there, why don't you, talk to us about the new program that you're working on putting together for those on fixed incomes or elderly and aren't able to, maintain their property?
Yes, sir. Right now, we happen to be very fortunate to have two organizations, two churches that have volunteered to help any of the elderly or disabled that are unable to take care of their properties. And we've been forwarding those as council and other people in the community have forwarded those names to us. We've been forwarding them to those organizations.
Very good. If you, in the audience, or those listening at home, all three of you, if you would, contact the city, if you have a neighbor or a family member that could benefit from this, even before a complaint may be filed. It would be nice for the city to get this information so we can turn it over to these two churches. And, care to say who they are? Or they want to be left anonymous?
Probably better leave it anonymous and go through us so they don't get too
Very
many.
good. Very good. Any other questions for, Mr. Wyatt? Anything from the audience on filing liens? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 17 is the second reading of ordinance 18-2380. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance authorizes the lease of unneeded municipal real property located at 2020 Valley Dale Road, Suite 208, the Alabama Department of Revenue, and authorizes Mayor Cato to execute lease agreement related to this.
Motion to adopt ordinance 18-2380.
Second.
Have a motion, second. Any comments or questions from the council? This is reestablishment of the lease with the Alabama Department of Revenue. Anything from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green.
Aye.
Mr. Lydic.
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks.
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
Mr. Shaw.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye. Item 18, the second reading of ordinance 18-2381. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance authorizes the lease of unneeded municipal real property located at 2020 Valley Dale Road, Suite 108, to the Hoover Historical Society, and authorizes Mayor Cato to execute a lease agreement.
Move to adopt ordinance 18-2381.
Second.
A motion, second. Mr. Rice, do you want to reiterate any of your comments from Thursday?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is granting some space in the Public Safety Center down on the ground floor adjacent to the courts to the Historical Society. They function as our archivists for the city, provide a very valuable service to us. And the thought process is that I think their time has ended at their current location. So we want to assist them getting to this location. We do have some long-term plans, as we've discussed, with our court system, some expansion. We think there's enough time gap there to take care of the historical society and look for a permanent location. And Mr. Lyda helped me get straight in my mind the other night. This is a $10,000 valuation on the space, but the services that they render as archivists for the city will satisfy that bill.
Think they get a 1099 for that?
Don't know about that. We're working pretty hard though.
All right. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Lyda?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Adoption passes. Item 19, second reading of ordinance 18-2382, Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include property owned by the Brook Highland Community Church as shown on the map attached to the ordinance. This is phase 6 of a multi-stage annexation.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 18-2382.
Second.
We have a motion and 2 seconds. Madam Clerk, this is the final vote for this particular parcel of property. Very good. Any questions for staff? Is there anybody here from the church tonight? Just wondering. Anything else from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Lyda?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Item 20 is second reading of ordinance 18-2383, Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include property located at 118 Morris Hill Road, owned by Stein and Sports Properties LLC.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 18-2383.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? These are going to be good neighbors. Anything from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Lyda?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Item 21, second reading of ordinance 18-2384, Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include property located on Old Rocky Ridge Road, owned by D.R. Horton, rezoned by the city.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 18-2385.
Second.
We have a motion second. I'd like to maintain debate here at less than 45 minutes.
I'm sorry, let me amend my motion. I move for the adoption, yes, sir. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 18-2384. I move to have.
Second.
All right, got it right that time.
That's right. Sorry.
Anything from the council? Anything from the audience? Is the applicant here? How you doing? Good. Guess there's nothing we need to say at this point. Maybe a vote? All right. Hearing, seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Lyda?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Nay.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Next, item 23 is the first reading of ordinance 18-2386. Mr. Corley. 85, got me ahead. All right. Nobody cares about that one.
Try to pass it twice.
Item 22, second reading of ordinance 18-2385.
This ordinance amends the city's municipal code to revise the small cell facilities ordinance, ordinance number 18-2378, adopted by the city council on June 4, 2018.
Mr. President, I move for adoption of ordinance 18-2385.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'm sure we're gonna line them up again tonight. No? Seriously? Here she comes. Jerry?
Terry Williams with AT&T from 1884 Data Drive, which is the AT&T Alabama headquarters. I just want to thank y'all for the time we've spent on this. guys understand the issues that we brought to you. We do hope that you'll consider those, and we just look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think tonight's amendments are good because they all favor industry. So, any comments or questions from the council?
Just I'll say really quick, you know, it's been a year coming, and it's obviously we've had a lot of back and forth on a lot of the amendments, and I'd like to thank my representatives from the industry, a lot of input, and we've responded to a lot of those things. No, we didn't respond to all of them. However, this is not, you know, one discussion I had as well. Once this is done, it's done. You know, we can review this in a month, 3 months, 6 months, see how it's going, see how the application process is going, see how the investment aspects are going, and everything. And if we need to review it, we certainly can. However, I think we've, after all this work, we've come to a good ordinance that's balanced, that has some fair fees and fair structures and review structures, and I think we have a good ordinance.
Very good. Anything else from the audience? Not seeing anything from the council. Hearing and seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green. Mr. Lyden.
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks.
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
Mr. Shaw.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye. All right, now item 23, first reading of ordinance 18-2386, Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include 3/10 acres of vacant residential property located adjacent to 4909 Koshat Trail owned by Craig and Philpott. Second reading of this item and its consideration for adoption will be on Monday, July 2nd, 2018.
Very good. We've already handled items 24 through 27. Item 28 is an ABC application. Saltgrass Birmingham Inc., doing business as Saltgrass Steakhouse, 2943 John Hawkins Parkway. This is new ownership on a previously approved site. It used to be Southern Legacy Barbecue and Brew. Open for a motion.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of the ABC application for Saltgrass Birmingham Incorporated.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 29 is an ABC application, special retail more than 30 days, Noah Operations, Hoover, Alabama LLC, doing business as Noah's Event Venue, 2501 International Park Place. This is a permitted accessory use.
Mr. President, I move to approve the ABC application for Noah Operations, Hoover, Alabama LLC.
Second.
Second. I have a motion in 2 seconds. Posing Mr. Green. Mr. Mack here.
No, sir, he's out.
He's out.
Yes.
I didn't know if we had any additional comments on what an accessory use is.
I can take a layperson stab at that.
We'll figure it out.
We talked about Thursday night, I repeat what we said Thursday night.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Accessory use is when it's not the primary use for a commercial facility. So in this instance, serving alcohol is not their primary function, but yet an added-on accessory to their primary business of renting space.
So if a day spa was to offer the sale of wine or champagne,
For a gun range, as you pointed out the other day.
or a gun range, not the primary use.
Correct.
Maybe not the gun range. ATF doesn't like their letters.
Correct.
That's
right.
All right, any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 30, we're going to start with a public hearing. Consider the request of Richard Johnson, representing SB Dev Corp., for approval of the 13th Amendment to the Trace Crossings PUD, rezoning approximately 2.4 acres known as the Feldspar property from planned single-family to planned light industrial. It's going to be a nuclear waste facility, or what, Mr. Johnson? Well, let's get them out. Well, we having a public hearing, so what you going to put there?
I don't know.
Don't know. Is it going to have gears and wheels and noise and
No.
uh,
Yeah, commercial use.
trying to help you out? I know you get paid by the work, so.
I do, Richard Johnson, representing SB Davenport, 3545 Market
property was rezoned at the time we brought Fleming into the city. This property had previously been zoned I-1, we're asking it to be reverted back. It was property that was unneeded, or unused by the city when the sports park donation was made, because we reconfigured and used this same acreage in another location. So it's actually a reversion. It happens in the form of an amendment to the Trace Crossing PUD because it is controlled still by U.S. Steel.
And, your business is operating on either side, correct? Or going to be?
Yes, they're zoned to be.
There you go. All right, any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Mr. Schultz, come on down.
Robert Schultz, 348 Albemarle Drive. Just have a question, light industrial, exactly what can be put on that property?
And build a house.
What can be built on?
Anything industrial, light industrial.
Yes, sir. I'm going to give you some examples. This is not an exhaustive list, but things like light packaging. Some of the businesses that are back there now under this zoning include pharmaceutical packaging business, businesses that need greater than usual amount of ancillary storage. So places that have a certain amount of stock that they have to keep on hand that's greater than a typical commercial occupancy. It does not allow things like concrete plants. You might have like a light machine shop type operation, but it doesn't allow the heavy uses that would go under a traditional industrial zoning. It's basically everything back behind the Hoover complex on Feldspar Way. This is a piece of that property. And as Mr. Johnson mentioned, it kind of got swept up inadvertently in the 11th Amendment to be donated to the city. And then when we really started looking at the Hoover complex soccer fields, we realized that this piece was not necessary. It was a clerical oversight, probably Scrivener's error in the documents. And so it just needs to go back to them, but also go back to its original zone.
Thank you.
Shaw, do you have anything?
I was gonna say, the reason it's going to planned industrial, or not, the reason it's going back, that's the original zoning before it was moved to residential, so it's just having it back to what it was.
Mr. President, so the nearest residence to this property would be how far away, approximately?
I'm not sure, I'd say more than several thousand feet.
There was no notification required on this team residents tonight, right?
Correct.
So it's greater than 500 feet, for sure.
Correct.
Scribble was there.
Yeah, the scribbler's name is Richard Johnson.
Yeah. All right.
Hey, the second.
You second the motion?
No, I'm Scrivener.
You're the scribbler.
Let's go.
Oh, okay. All right, so maybe you're not getting paid.
I hope so, sir.
All right, anything from the audience?
He's watching, so.
Yes, sir, come on down. If you give us your name and address, please.
My name is Wade Morgan, 3150 Sawyer Drive. And my question is, without knowing what the planned business is, why the hurry to rezone? Why can't it wait until there's a proposal for the council to consider?
Mr. Shaw, would you like to answer that?
Well, it's typically a situation, the question before us is a rezoning. Sometimes people talk about what they want to do with the rezoning, sometimes people don't. I would say just what we discussed in planning and zoning is, if you look at the map, if this stayed residential, it would jut some of these residential buildings out into existing commercial industrial things. So in this case, it's less about what it's for and more what appropriate use would be, if that makes sense. So that's the question before us, yeah.
Mr. Posey has a map, so let's see, you would see that it's scheduled to be surrounded by other commercial properties of like use.
So
in this case, it's less about what's the purpose is for.
I just noticed it's right behind the middle school. And I would personally like to know what we're going there for. If we're going to build a business there, it'll have to be rezoned anyway. And why do it before we know what the proposal is?
But the other sides are already light industrial.
I understand.
And
planning and zoning. Right now, you're just rezoning it back to what it was, you're not building it, and when you do that, plat design, you gotta come back to planning and zoning before you put something there, and all these discussions would be had then.
That is not correct in principle. Richard Johnson again, they would have to, unless it's a parcel and not a lot, which I think is the case, the only thing that would be required by planning and zoning is establishment of a lot, plating of a lot. Excuse me. We would not have to come back to planning and zoning to discuss any permitted principal uses, but would be subject to staff review.
Okay.
And Trace Crossing Business Community, TCAC, and ARC review. Yes, sir.
So quite a lot of people would review this before you put something there, it's just not gonna be,
No.
throw it up tomorrow.
It would take months to get through those two review processes, as well as an engineering plan.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions from Mr. Johnson or staff, council, any from the audience? All right, seeing and hearing none.
Closing the hearing first?
Sorry?
Are we closing the hearing first?
Yeah, we're gonna close the hearing, and I'm gonna look for a motion. Yeah, that would probably help. Mr. Corley, second reading of ordinance 18-2376.
This ordinance amends Hoover zoning ordinance by rezoning 2.4 acres of property owned by S.V. Davenport, known as the Feldspar property located in the Trace Crossing B&D from PR1 to PI Plan Light Industrial.
All right, back. Motion and a second.
Mr. President, I move to adopt ordinance 18-2376.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Lydic?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You earned your keep. Item 31A is a public hearing to consider the request of Andrew Phillips representing the Ryan Companies for approval of a zoning amendment to the International Park PUD regarding International Park Second Sector Lot 7 located at 2545 Acton Road to rezone the property from planned office to planned commercial. The Ryan Companies are the property owners. This is a public hearing. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Is the applicant here? How you doing? Doing good. Ready for a vote? All right. No questions from the council or the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please, wait a minute. We've got to close the public hearing, and Mr. Corley, a second reading of ordinance 18-2377.
This ordinance amends Hoover zoning ordinance by rezoning property located at 2545 Acton Road in the International Park SUV from PO Planned Office to PC Planned Commercial.
Mr. President, I move to adopt ordinance 18-2377.
Second.
A motion and a second. Once again, anything from the council? Anything from the audience? Seeing and hearing.
Mr. President, real quick, this
Yes.
is just rezoning to commercial, correct?
Correct.
Not- okay.
Yeah, the other.
Just make that clear.
Conditional uses next. So we have a motion? Second. Any questions? Any questions? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Lydic?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Next, item B, public hearing to consider the request of Andrew Phillips representing the Ryan Companies for conditional use approval for a mixed-use development plan at International Park Second Sector Lot 7 located at 2545 Acton Road. The property owners are the Ryan Companies. And if I understand, this includes 44 flats, as they would be called in England, apartments as they would be called in Hoover. Mr. Rice. And I think 22 of these are one-bedroom units, aren't they?
Yes, sir, and that's exactly why I'm up. Mr. Martin asked that I convey, I think he was able to interject this at the work session, but he wanted to ensure that all of you had, on the body, had the most recent projection as it pertains to school children. So So 44 proposed units, 24 of which are single bedroom, and 20 of which are two bedroom. And so by his calculation, generously, that would be expected to add 7 or 8 students maximum to Hoover City Schools. So although the unit count sounds somewhat substantial based on the nature of the units themselves, that is a determining factor in the equation. So that's the most accurate student count that we have. And he ran a couple of verifying figures to make sure that the percentages were correct, and he laid this against Birchall Apartments in Ross Bridge and Ridge Crossings Apartments on Highway 150, so a relatively newer and relatively older unit, and all of the percentages and the information that he found hold true for those units as well.
Any questions for Mr. Rice?
Mr. President, Mr. Rice, what is the closest existing apartment complex to this facility, proposed facility?
In the city or out of the city?
Either.
I think it'd be the old Sundown Apartments on Old Rocky Ridge.
Several complexes on Old Rocky Ridge, Harbor Beach Road.
You're gonna have the new townhomes, those aren't apartments, so.
Right. Some properties out of the city on Old Rocky Ridge.
But none within the city.
I'm looking at the guys who have to know all this. Nothing inside the city that's in proximity.
What about the neighboring Vestavia? Is there any plan for the Altadena Valley area? I know it's Vestavia, it's not us.
No, sir, I'm not free. I'm sure they have plans, but I don't know what they are.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President,
Dr. Middlebrooks.
what is the closest fire department?
Any fire station?
Or Hoover Fire Station?
Well, the closest Hoover fire station that serves International Park is Fire Station 4 here on Municipal Drive. However, Rocky Ridge Fire Station 1 and probably 2 are both closer, and we enjoy automatic aid with them. So they're actually the first responding facilities in terms of fire protection to International Park, and they would be to this as well.
What's their ISO rating?
1.
Rocky Ridge is a 1?
That's
Thanks,
1.
They're 1, and they're a part of us being a 1 because of the automatic aid that we enjoy with Rocky Ridge and several other departments. That's a major factor.
What are the ones right there in the curve? Is it here? That's really the closest.
Woodmere condos or the
That's,
apartments? I think they're condominiums.
Okay.
I'm going way back in the memory,
Right.
lane, but I think Woodmere's a condominium complex. Window.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I guess, Mr. President, one more question, I guess. With all the businesses, locating, or already located, relocating their International Park, I understand the rezoning from office to commercial, but, got all those people that work there. What's the need to put residential there?
I think and I'm, first of all, Mr. Martin's never again allowed to take vacation, but I think that, that's a very good question. I think that the idea is that this is a design product that we're finding an increasing use and popularity in suburban settings. So it's been an urban reality for a long time. We've been trying to find a way, kind of a safe way to allow this to be tested in the city because there are no immediately adjacent residential neighborhoods. So it takes away some of the exposure and risk that we might have if someone were proposing to do this adjacent to existing neighborhoods of different character. I think we're gonna see a lot more requests from developers to do this type of density and this particular design product with on-site residential. We've heard many times from different commercial developers that on-site residential helps drive the sustainability of the mom and pop shops and some of the things that we like to add to our retail mix. And that's, a lot of the times we hear about specific vacancy rates in different commercial centers. It typically is the small bay spaces that are not necessarily chains or national retailers. It's local people trying to make a go of it and having a tough time. So on-site residential helps with that concept. Is that help?
It does. I'm not sold at 44 units is gonna make or break a business. I understand.
Any other questions for Mr. Rice?
Hope not.
Mr. Rice, memory back to your first lieutenant's test. If the owner operator lived above the store, what was the typical word for where they lived?
Taxpayer.
Exactly. Mayor, you remember that on your lieutenant's test? All right. We're gonna end the public hearing. We have the request for conditional use. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I would move to approve the conditional use for mixed-use development, and I would request a roll call vote.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, request for roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Green?
Nay.
Mr. Whitehead?
Nay.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Nay.
Mr. Posey?
Nay.
Mr. Shaw?
Nay.
Mr. Smith?
Doesn't matter. So, the conditional use is voted down. Check with the attorney. There you go.
The motion fails.
Motion, sorry, but the motion is not approved. Item 32, yet another public hearing, consider request of Brooks Knapp, Vice President of EBSCO Industries, Inc., to rezone approximately 63.31 acres located at US Highway 280 and Alabama Highway 119 from Community Business District to not zone to PUD, planned unit development known as Tattersall Park. The property owner is EBSCO Industries. Mr. Rice.
Yes, sir, just wanted to come with some clarification. There was a minor omission when we turned in information to the clerk's office about how to post this. So everything that would go under this PUD would be going from C2 business and NZ, not zoned, to PC, planned commercial, with the exception of any parcels that have already been developed, and they would retain their existing zone. We just failed to specify what the new zoning would be under the PUD. We should have given that to the clerk. And a question was asked by the community about that. So specifically, there'll be nothing that starts with an R. It'll either be an existing business that's already there, or any undeveloped parcels would go to PC.
Any questions for Mr. Rice? This is a public hearing.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Just to clarify, if they did want to add residential to this PUD, they would have to come back before this body for rezone.
Yes, sir, they'd have to start with planning commission and seek rezoning for whatever parcel they were proposing and bring it all the way through the process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything from the audience? This is a public hearing. Seeing, hearing none, we're going to close the public hearing. And Mr. Corley, the second reading of ordinance 2379, please.
This ordinance amends Hoover zoning ordinance by rezoning 63.31 acres of property owned by EBSCO Industries, Inc., located at US Highway 280 and Alabama State Highway 119 from C2 and NZ to PUD, planned unit development to be known as Tattersall Park.
Sounds like what I said.
Mr. President, I move for adoption of ordinance 18-2379.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Whitehead?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Item 33 is to set public hearings for Monday, July 16th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. The following requests which come forward, positive recommendations from the June 11th Planning and Zoning meeting. Item A, Jamie Cowden, U.S. Steel Corporation, is requesting conditional use approval for the Church of Ross Bridge to operate at 2101 Grand Avenue in Ross Bridge. Property is owned by U.S. Steel and is zoned planned commercial. Item B, Christopher Scott Huskin is requesting conditional use approval to allow on and off premise sale of retail beer, retail table wine at the Casual Pint located at 5541 Grove Boulevard at the Grove. Property is owned by Chemco Realty Corporation and is owned land commercial. Mr. Lyda, payment of the bills.
Yes, sir, Mr. Smith, I've reviewed the bills, and I move they be paid in full as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Comments or questions from the council?
Yes, Mr. Smith, I'd like to take a moment tonight to congratulate Hoover's former assistant police chief, A.C. Roper, on his new job as the deputy chief of the Army Reserve. It's certainly an honor to be selected for that position.
And General Roper will be serving at the Pentagon for the next year. Chief, maybe he'll give you a tour. Be nice. If you keep a good relationship. Anything else from the council?
Mr. President, I see some folks here from the Hoover Met Complex. My son just finished the basketball camp and came home nice and worn out and passed out after getting all the sweat off of him, and he'll be back for the football camp, so good job on this.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Mayor, do you have anything this evening? All right, just remind everyone, we will have a special call meeting on the revenue items on Tuesday, July the 10th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. Anything from the audience? Yes, sir, come on down. Name and address, please.
Tom Kendall. I live at 404 Shadeswood Circle here in Hoover, the Bluff Park section. And had one of those homes that had a place next door to me that needed cleaning up. And I want to congratulate the people who did that. I know there's a lot of honors a while ago, and I want to tell all those people congratulations with their promotions and all. But there's 4 gentlemen that work for the city of Hoover. One of them's a Jody Janelle, one of them is a Billy Graham, a Wayne Headley, and a George Henry. If you don't know them, you ought to. They are first-class employees. Those gentlemen took on a project last week. 90-degree weather, 60-65% humidity. I would venture to say that on my last count, these trucks that haul limbs and all this with a boom on them, they hauled away 3 solid truck loads of stuff off of that piece of property. And as I said, did a fantastic job. If you don't know them, I highly recommend if you ever get a chance, congratulate them on the job that they do in that type of work.
One thing, if I could.
When they were, sir?
One thing before you move on, I know employees always love to have letters of commendation from the public that can go in their personnel files. So if you could put pen to paper and even name all those individuals, and it will get to human resources, and will probably be posted on the work board if they're.
Good. I'll be glad to do that. I'll be glad to do that because they did put out. It was tough. It was a job. To the point, I was standing there on the second morning, on Wednesday morning, talking with Jody for a moment. And 2 separate neighbors of mine that live on the cul-de-sac came down the street, slowed up, almost stopped, let their windows down, and said, "Gentlemen, you are doing a great job." And they told me that on Tuesday, there had been some other ones who said the same thing to them. So that's how impressed the people on my cul-de-sac were that we were getting a garbage dump cleaned up down there on the corner. I don't know how many of you might know this in here, but this type of thing is not going on just in the city of Hoover. Last Monday night, I think it was on Channel 6, 6 on Your Side, interviewed the mayor of Gardendale. And he had 11 or 12 homes up there, I'll say homes, dumps, that they were cleaning up also. And he said the people who own the houses will pay the bill, because he said they'll be sent a bill. If they don't pay it between now and the end of the year, it will be on their taxes. So they're gonna get their money. And I think it's fantastic that other communities are doing the same identical thing to make their properties look better. I have one other thing I'd like to say. You know, you always hear that nothing stands out like a sore thumb. They cleaned up the property. What's sitting on the property is 2 worthless junk automobiles that need to go on the back of a rollback wrecker and go to the dump.
Sir, if I could,
And I hope that you people, because I spoke to you 2 weeks ago, and I mentioned this, and I showed you the ordinance that is good in the city of Birmingham and in Homewood. It has held up in the court of law. It will work. If you don't have a copy of it, I'll be glad to give you mine. And let's do something about these cars that are parked in these yards and in these carports that look so terribly bad, that will not run. One of them sitting next to me has a license tag on it that's probably about 18 years old. It looks that bad. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Just so you know, an ordinance was passed out of Mr. Green's Public Works Committee this past Thursday. And we'll probably see a first reading on July 2nd.
Thank you very much.
Anything else from the audience?